Hey there, welcome to the Bible in 5. This is part 2 of the Gospel of John, which you are right in the middle of in the Eat This Book reading plan. So you recall that the first main section of the Gospel of John, chapters 1 through 12, were mainly stories about Jesus, focused on his actions. He would heal somebody, perform some kind of sign, and that would cause a controversy or a misunderstanding, and then he would use that as a moment to reveal his identity and who he is. This is the action-packed part of the gospel. And so you learn from this part of the gospel that Jesus is the revelation of Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, but he says he makes himself equal to Yahweh, but then he also calls Yahweh God his Father, and he calls himself the Son. And so it's this idea that you have this dual identity within the one true God, God the Father and God the Son. And that takes one more step of development in the second half of the gospel here. So this summarizes years of Jesus' ministry, of God the Son following the will of God the Father, working out salvation and redemption. And after these years of Jesus' ministry, he comes to Jerusalem for one final climactic week. And so the first half covers a few years, the last half of the Gospels just like a week and a few days. And so chapters 13 through 17 are just one night of Jesus' life. It's his final words. He has a final meal with the Last Supper with his closest followers, and it's long speeches of Jesus. And these speeches weave together the themes that you've already been reading about. So in these chapters, Jesus talks about his identity as the revelation of the one true God. But he also talks about how he's going to have to die. He's going away to bear the sins of the world into himself, but that he's not going to leave his followers alone. A big theme right here is that after he dies and is raised from the dead, he will send the Spirit. And so we have this very strong Trinity themes right here. The Spirit will be the presence of Jesus among his followers, in them, inviting them into the life of the Father and of the Son. It's very, very powerful. So like in chapter 15, he uses the image of the vine and the branches. And he says, just as the Father and the Son and the Spirit are one God, but yet three in relationship to themselves, he invites his followers to experience life in God's presence. It's like he is the vine and we as his followers are the branches. Very powerful themes here about what it means to abide or connect ourselves deeply to Christ in prayer and through the Spirit. And so he empowers his followers with these final words, encouraging them that he will not be absent from them even though he's going away. He'll be present with them. And that his death is not an accident. It's intentional. So as Jesus goes from his final night of teaching his disciples, he moves into controversy in Jerusalem. And these describe just his final days in Jerusalem, where he goes into confrontation with the Jewish leaders, which he's already been in confrontation here, but it comes to its climactic point here. And all throughout these stories, you get this idea, Jesus is very much in control. His arrest, his trial, the crucifixion is not an accident or an unfortunate event to Jesus. It's supposed to happen. This is how God is going to reveal himself and save the world. It's through the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And the themes about the meaning of Jesus' death and what he's doing, they come out loud and clear in these stories. The gospel ends with the resurrection narratives, and it ends here with a little epilogue. It began with a prologue, and it began with an epilogue. So the risen Jesus comes to his disciples, and he breathes on them. It's a very strange little story at the end of the Gospel of John. But you may or may not know this. The Greek word for breath, and also in Hebrew, is the same word as spirit. So just as God the Father sent the Son, Jesus said he would send the Spirit, or God's breath, on them. And so what happens at the end of the story is he's sending them out to be in the world and to announce the good news, just like Jesus was in the world announcing good news. He empowers them with his Spirit to do that. And so you have a movement, the Son sent from the Father, and then the Son sends the Spirit to send out his followers into the world. And the last story is a story about Peter. Peter, who betrayed Jesus here, it's a story of Jesus forgiving Peter and instating him as the one who will lead and guide the early part of the Jesus movement spreading out into the world. And so really it's a story of forgiveness and grace as Jesus sends his followers into the world. And so with that, the Gospel of John ends, and it makes you begin to reflect. If you have come to understand the identity of Jesus and the identity of the God revealed here of Father, Son, and Spirit, if you recognize your own failures and betrayals of Jesus, this last story is meant to be a great comfort, that he forgives and shows grace to his people, and he sends us out to be witnesses to the gospel and to our encounter with Jesus as we're invited into life and relationship with him. The Gospel of John is very powerful. It deserves to be read and reread and reread. And I hope your experience as spending a couple of weeks in the Gospel of John is a powerful one for you. So thanks. We'll see you next time.